Incubus, or shit white people be on. Let me feed on your trauma. Leave the skin on as I suck. You dry. Can you sass this up? Make it about how you overcame. Insert your brokenness here. Somewhere in the story, I must rescue you. Somewhere else, remind the audience this is only a story. I am the audience. Show me where it hurts. Is it contagious? I'm in cathartic. For me, your voice is an actor. Your voice is a demigod. I must devour from the stem. Often when I have recited this poem to predominantly white audiences in the Twin Cities, I swap out the word white for y'all. Because on some twisted level, in a persona poem where I express my frustrations with white people's obsession with the pain of the oppressed, an obsession bent on consuming the trauma and grief of the very people responding to the circumstances created by state-sanctioned violence and white supremacy, on some level, I have internalized the very violence of consumption I aim to critique. When I originally agreed to stand here to talk with TEDxMinneapolis, it was BC, months before Minneapolis' own Red Summer. BC before COVID, before the uprisings, before George Floyd was murdered. I was supposed to come here today to talk to you all about Black Muslim women and the arts. You see, I'm a Black Muslim woman and I'm an artist, I'm a poet. I wanted you to know about the abundance of Black Muslim women who are creatives and curators and culture makers. I wanted you to know about and meaningfully invest in the creative works and legacies of Black Muslim women who create, who laid the groundwork in their innovations and culture making, who have built and continue to build and contribute to our broader culture. I wanted to tell all you pleasant white folks viewing this to seek out the Black Muslim women and the non-binary artists in your communities, established, emergent, and potential artists, and meaningfully support and invest in their work, to hire them to be your speakers on your panels, to assign their poetry collections and novels and scholarship in your classrooms, to curate series featuring their photographs and installations in your galleries and museums, to review their albums, to commission their murals, their dances, their plays, to hire them as editors, to feature their films in your theaters, to subscribe to their literary journals, and to have all of you pleasant viewers redistribute some of your wealth and invest into their work, their organizations. However, in preparation for today, I struggled to steady my mind to see anything other than the paradox that is this pandemic, that is Minneapolis's persistent attempted genocide upon my people, upon all oppressed peoples who dare to defend themselves against the violence of Minnesota. Pretty Minnesota, with its sculpted greenways and pristine precincts and passion-felt promises that dangle glittery decadence in one hand while bulldozing flat the homes of our siblings with the other hand. Pretty Minnesota, land of the man whose co-workers in the Congo called gentle, called beautiful, called a hugger, Big Floyd, the Texas chopped and screwed MC, the high school tight ends, and college basketball king, who followed 35W in Mississippi up here to this honey-tongued northern state to drive trucks and work security in bistros and nightclubs like my own father and uncles. Big Floyd, the father, the lover of nachos, the negotiator, the hugger, who wanted to learn bachata. Big Floyd, who would stay after hours to help the cleanup crew. Big Floyd, the hugger, who survived COVID, who survived bullets, who survived America until pretty Minnesota brought its knee to his neck. In one version of my TEDx talk, I wanted to start my talk with a quotation A brief excerpt of a speech from Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison gave the speech called A Humanistic View in 1975. In this version of my TEDx talk, I wanted to quote the following from that speech. The function, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. In this incomplete and out-of-context quote of Morrison, I neglected and failed to make sense of my own anger and frustrations for what was happening, what keeps being filmed and documented and picked over by political pundits and self-proclaimed leaders and organizers and activists and artists. That is, this strategically continued and multi-pronged assault on our lives. Yes, I'm talking about anger and rage. Yes, this is rage for George Floyd, for David Smith, Thurman Blevin, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud Arbery, Nia Wilson, Tamir Rice, Nebra Hassanin, Mike Brown, Eric and Erica Gardner, and the Black Muslim family burned alive in their Denver, Colorado home. Yes, this rage for Minnesota, like any other state in America, where Black people here, while only 7% of the total population are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Yes, this rage for a place as cute as Minnesota to act like we're supposed to grin and bear the realities of Black folks in Minnesota, making nearly half the median income of white Minnesotans grin and nod our heads generously for the selective and heavily regulated instances of white generosity, grants and loans and mutual aid efforts that pop up to undo, however temporarily, the collective amnesia white America perpetuates whenever it desires to feel less terribly about not seeing the very racism it hired to assassinate us. Right now, in this very moment, I am redoing this TEDx talk for the umpteenth time, fully aware that TEDxMinneapolis asked their only Black Muslim speaker to film a rehearsal for her talk on September the 11th, 2020. The same day, Minneapolis courts will hear out the lethal whining of 4 murderers in blue who waited for news crews to flee our city before blatantly refusing to accept accountability. These 4 officers, with whom our city council and mayor financed, continue to deny their individual and institutional roles in the murdering of George Floyd. At 8:30 a.m. on September the 11th, 2020, I attended a community demonstration outside of the courthouse, while TEDxMinneapolis emailed me and my fellow rehearsal participants hours later to notify us that a demonstration was happening for George Floyd and that it shouldn't impact our commutes to evening rehearsals near downtown Minneapolis. September the 11th, 2020 is the first email communication throughout our spring and summer preparation to stand on this red dot where TEDxMinneapolis mentioned George Floyd's name. I named this particular date, this one of many instances of a lifetime of such instances where I have accepted historically white institutions and their allies' prioritization of my unpaid labor over the care of my personhood as a Black Muslim woman who does not come from a wealthy family, processing and struggling to do more than quietly survive America's real-time nightmare. It is within this nightmare that officers like Thomas Lane, a 37-year-old rookie who within 10 seconds of banging his flashlight against the car window of Big Floyd, unholstered his state-issue gun and pointed it in the face of Big Floyd and yelled and spewed swear words into the face of Big Floyd, who was clearly confused, clearly in shock, clearly traumatized and re-traumatized by the domineering aggressions of Officer Lane, who pointed a loaded gun into Floyd's face. It does not matter to the state of Minnesota whether or not the rookie in blue comes from a Minneapolis police family royalty. The state of Minnesota does not care that just a few years prior to becoming a weapon of capitalism, that Officer Lane himself had utilized his own privileges to successfully finesse himself out of at least a dozen arrests and traffic violations. The state does not care. Why would we expect the rookie in blue to understand that the 15 minutes of real-ass fear and terror from Big Floyd, the hugger, who tried repeatedly to beg for his life? It wasn't just 8 minutes and 46 seconds of one man's knee on another man's neck. It was 34 minutes and 19 seconds of Officer Thomas Lane's body cam footage. It is every day that followed the year 1619. It is every lynching filmed or unfilmed. It is Mankato, Minnesota in December of 1862. It is every eviction, housed or unhoused, by notice or by bulldozer. It is Woodward recording our presidents admitting to downplaying the severity of the virus, and months and thousands of deaths later, selling a book about it. The reason why one version of my TEDxMinneapolis talk began with a quote from Toni Morrison was because I remembered not the speech and its unabashed and instructive criticalness, but instead I remembered what white America had told me I should remember. Even in my desperation, even with my subconscious spiritual mind trying its best to nudge me into seeing the answer right there with an ancestor, equipped and fierce with its instruction, I still only remembered what white America had remembered and recirculated down my throat. I do, however, want to share a better contextualized quote from Morrison. It is important, therefore, to know who the real enemy is and to know the function, the very serious function of racism, which is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you from explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says that you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says that you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of that is necessary. Before that portion of her speech, Morrison goes into a full analysis in 1975 about the context of this country that is inclusive of understanding the class dynamics of this country and the longevity of and severity of this oppression that is intertwined. And so I want to be clear that right now I'm taking responsibility for my own internalization of the weapons of my oppressor. And I need you to clearly understand that this oppression is directly and undeniably connected and interwoven with yours. Yes, you viewers streaming from the comfort of your cozy home. Yes, you, the camera crews, the orchestrators of this lofty illusion that prioritizes deadlines over compassion and tenderness and intentionality of action. Your oppression and my oppression are intertwined. Viewer, your obligation is well within your own reach, so grab it.